Welcome to another edition of Entrepreneurs in Fuego. We're digitally documenting the journey of entrepreneurs such as Danielle Stevens. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me today.
Let me tell you something. I mean, you look really cool. You got a tie on, and this is the first time I'm wearing a tie in the show, man. It's like special. You know, we've done close to 100 interviews. I'm wearing T-shirts. I'm wearing all this,
So this is a spiffy session.
You know why?
Why?
Because I knew you were going to wear a tie today. I knew that I had to do that.
And we have the same color palette going on too,
Man,
so we got all bases covered.
Tell us a little bit about what you do.
So I founded the Darkly Agency, which is a design and marketing agency, in 2009. And the name of it is the Darkly Agency, or Darkly for short.
Yeah.
And basically we specialize in branding, website design, and sort of building cultures around businesses through both digital and off sort of line components. So we do a lot of website design, creative projects, videography, photography, and all that kind of stuff. And then we strategically brand startups and businesses.
We'll get to your personal journey here in a minute, but I got to tell you, I mean, I saw your site. And you rock, man. I mean, your approach to design, your creativity is just amazing. Where'd you get that, man?
Thank you. It's a collective.
It truly is. I mean, I
appreciate.
Let me tell you something. I don't say shit gratuitously. I mean, if I feel that it's not, then I probably wouldn't bring it up. But it is. It is very, very, very insightful, very powerful.
Thank you. That's an extreme compliment coming from you. I can tell you have a great eye for design just by the office pile and how you've sort of put it together. It's incredible. You've definitely succeeded in building a culture around your brand. So hats off to you.
Well, coming from a branding person, we're just complimenting each other.
I know. But no, it's not just me. It's a collective of creatives that have come together to make the Darkly Agency. I have two very, very talented partners named Alexis and Shireen. They are there to constantly help me run the business and have all these creative concepts and ideas. And we all have different talents we bring to the table, so we really flatter each other.
Tell me about the creative process.
Sure.
I come in to you with an idea, and do you automatically kind of see it and then you start developing? How does that work? Now, as you can see, we're all about artists, we're all about being creative, and so the creative process is something that really fascinates me. So tell me about your creative process. How does that work?
Sure. And that's a really, really great question. It's very exciting. We start with any creative process, and at least with our methodology as Darkly, we start with research. We want to know exactly who the consumers are, who your target audience is. We create profiles of these people, and we see what do they like, what speaks to them, what magazines do they subscribe to, what are their online and offline habits, how do they consume media, and what kind of brands do they admire and use. And we take this knowledge and research, we compile it, put it together and synthesize it, and then from there we'll start sort of creatively looking for options that speak to our research and the consumer.
But more specifically, do you lock yourself in a room?
We do.
Do you go to a mountain? What do you do? You just get away. Tell me about that part of the creative process.
I will. It sounds cliche, but really we can have an idea at 2 in the morning. We can have an idea at 12 in the afternoon. From my experience, the creative process is most difficult when you are forcing yourself to do it. If you're sitting at a complete blank canvas or a blank screen and you're starting that creative process, I think that's when you're least likely to come up with your best idea.
Do you put yourself in the shoes of the consumer and going, all right, this is what I would want to see if I were to buy or adopt this service from this particular company?
Absolutely. You have to put yourself in the mindset of that consumer. A lot of people assume that how they think and feel or how their consumers think and feel, and it's not true. And a huge mistake is letting your brand or your image, even as a person, be driven by how you think and feel. You want to be perceived by people in a certain way. You've got to think from their perspective.
Have you had a situation where, all right, you develop this brand, this concept, this logo, and it's like your baby and it's so good, and you go to the client and the client is like, yeah, but can you guys come up with something? And you're like, no, dude, this is it.
Yeah. Definitely. You have amazing questions, I must say. You definitely know what it's like to be on that end of things, I can tell. Yeah, and I think when you're a younger creative, you take it very personally. And then as you get experience and you mature, you learn to work with the client in a different capacity where their feedback is taken into account. It's hard because you have to keep in your mind, these people are paying for it, it is their business, they've got to live with it. So you have to strike that perfect balance between what people want, but the best thing to do is educate them. They're much more likely, after seeing research and what you've done, they're much more likely to make an educated decision and pick the one you want.
They have to live with it, but it's your design that is behind it. And if it doesn't work out as you would have, you imagined
Right.
it, that it should work out, then you're like, son of,
Yeah.
then don't you feel like a little frustration after?
Absolutely, of course. You feel frustration, then you have to remind yourself you got into this creative business and people are going to have opinions. Creative is not rocket science, unfortunately. There's no methodology like with accounting or being a doctor. So people don't necessarily perceive creative in the same way that they would someone with an applied science. They have an opinion. Everyone wants to consider themselves a creative person. That originates from when we're young and doing coloring books in school. So you have to remind yourself of that, as frustrating as it is. If it turns out to be a project that we really are disappointed in the outcome, and we tried our best to get the client to understand where we're coming from and what our research has shown, then we'll do it for the client, but we won't put it in our portfolio, of course.
Back in '99, one of the major movie studios wanted to produce the next Superman movie. It's 1999. And so they assigned Tim Burton to go ahead and direct it. Tim Burton's just an animal, right? I mean, he's out of this world.
Right.
Edward Scissorhands, I mean, he's incredibly creative. And so he cast Nicolas Cage as Superman. And people are like what the, there wasn't that
I'm even like, huh?
Exactly. You should look back at what his frustration was, because he created this amazing Superman, and it's just this incredible world, right? That it was just out of control. I mean, completely out of the ordinary. We're talking about 1999, and this amazing special effects, all in pre-production, with John Peters, who is also a genius, by the way. So anyway, the movie never got done, and of course we got the garbage that Superman Lives or whatever it is that came after in 2000. But I can understand how the creative process can be so frustrating, where you create something and the client says, I don't want. So there's got to be a lot of trust in there.
There does have to be a lot of relationship building at the beginning to make sure you're the right fit. I mean, as an agency, as you grow, you start being able to be a little more selective and at least making sure that the person you're working for values what you're doing, they get it, they understand it. If we see right from the start that the person is very closed-minded or, is really driven by what they want and what they envision without seeing the research or knowing who their target market is, and we'll probably go ahead and say, hey, you're not a good fit for Darkly.
I like that.
A little bit.
You stand your ground, man.
Well, sometimes, but I mean, we are flexible and we're professional. But yeah, it's frustrating, but I know.
This is what you need.
Inside, I'm like that.
Yeah.
But on the outside, I'm collected.
You're a pro. You're like, okay, you're cool.
Thank you.
How did you get into this business?
I actually started, it's interesting, I started a record label. I was in business school at the U of A, and go Wildcats. And
so I'm graduated from there.
But I started a record label and thinking I wanted to get into the music industry and business. I found that I was very obsessed with the market research and branding aspect
You
of
sing,
the.
or you play guitar, or you just?
I do. I'm a musician. I heard you are as well. I saw your set upstairs.
Well, we're just going to have to go upstairs.
We're going to have to jam out. We should have done it right here.
We should have. Had I known this, I should have done my research. Shit. But anyway, so you started a record label. So what happened?
So after I started really realizing where my passions lied within that realm of business, I went for it with Darkly and started really focusing on marketing and ethnology.
When you started this thing, what was your biggest frustration? Or the biggest obstacle, let me put it that way.
I think the biggest obstacle and what continues to be is the perceived bias that, you know, even when I sat down here, you were like, you look so young. So I think it works to my disadvantage a lot when, if I look young, I tried to give a $10,000 contract to somebody and he's saying, what? Who am I giving my money to this kid, you know? And so being a really young looking female has been an obstacle to some extent, you know, but most
by the
people are
way,
cool.
by the way, anybody that is younger than 54 is a kid to me. So
Exactly.
don't worry about that, man.
Yeah, exactly. So that sort of, you know, continues to be an obstacle. So I just try to look as professional and come across and educate the person to overcome any initial biases they may have.
Somebody that is watching us now, what advice you're going to give them? Because they're going to see Danielle, she did it. She overcame this obstacle here and there. And I would imagine, you know, you worked incredibly hard. Nobody gave you a check for $1 million. Go, hey, honey, go ahead and do it, you know. What advice would you give, let's say, a graduate from U of A that wants to follow in your footsteps?
Okay. Definitely the advice I would give to anybody who wants to pursue any goal or dream. If you're going to start your own business, you have to know people. Take it from a true entrepreneur who is very introverted. I had to learn the hard way, but I would highly, highly, highly recommend you get out there, you network, you get to know as many people as possible, and continue to build your network for the rest of your life.
That's awesome, man.
Thank you.
That's awesome.
You know how it is. It's not what you do or how much you know, it's who you know. So, and that's important to hang on to.
You know, that's from a Jackson Brown song.
I did not know that.
You're too young. That's
there
why.
you go. I'll have
You
to
didn't
listen to
either,
it.
Taylor. You're like shaking your head. Of course, all of you are young. You know, I mean, what the? Here, where am I looking for? Oh, I'm looking for this because I'm going to give you a gift today.
Thank you.
All right, and this is it's called Peaceful Soul. We figured that a lot of entrepreneurs have some traits in common, some virtues in common, which are, I should memorize this at some point. Simplicity, discipline, humility, kindness, and honesty.
Definitely.
Right?
I would agree with that 100%.
So I'm gonna get. Don't. We have like 1,000 of them in the
Yes.
back, so we'll get your right size and everything else. But this is for you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
I looked at your slide. I mean, I looked at the work that you did, and I was mesmerized. I really looked at it and saw your guys' approach. Very, very powerful, very impacting. So I remember the brand, and that's what's
the
all
highest
about.
of compliments you can
I
give
like it,
anybody.
man, I like it.
I appreciate that very much, and thank you for having me today.
You're gonna come back, man.
I will, and I plan on being here quite often from now on. Thank you.
You're awesome, and that we're out.